Good morning and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. Today we will be discussing maternal mental health. Joining me is Ethiopia Ewart and Cindy Macmillan. Welcome,
Morning.
ladies. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, how are y'all doing?
Pretty good. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am awesome. I am awesome. It is so great to have you here on today's show to discuss maternal mental health. But before I do that, let me introduce you to our audience. I'm going to start with Ethiopia. Let me just pull up her bio for you. And to begin, Ethiopia is the owner and lead therapist at Ethiopia as Ewart PLLC, a mental wellness practice. She is a licensed clinical social worker associate and has master's degrees in social work and in teaching English. In her work, she passionately supports individuals, couples, and families in achieving mental well being and offers expertise as a parenting and relationship coach. She is the mother of two beautiful and intelligent children. Welcome, Ethiopia. And we have Cindy Macmillan. Cindy is dedicated to supporting and advocating for for equitable birthing experiences. As owner of Black Rose Integrative Group and executive director of the Center for Birthing Equity, she leads efforts to address systemic inequities in Black maternal health in the United States and educates on the maternal and infant mortality crisis, aiming to improve outcomes for all birthing individuals. In 2016, she co founded Sisters Caring for Sisters, Inc. for social justice through community based doers. Cindy is a single mother of four children. Welcome, Cindy.
Great.
Now, today we're going to start off by asking, well, how I've done this is to have like groups, and we're going to start off by looking at, or rather, understanding maternal mental health, what it is, and I'm going to ask Ethiopia to start us off by giving us a brief on what are some of the common mental health challenges faced by Black mothers during pregnancy and postpartum, as
Okay.
well as. Go
Okay.
ahead,
Okay.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Ethiopia.
Thanks, Sonia. Well, this in speaking about maternal mental health is specifically just acknowledging the mental health of folks who are pregnant and not just pregnant because there's a perinatal, right? Pre-pregnancy, while you're pregnant, and postpartum. So addressing the mental health of those individuals, and while any pregnant person can experience mental challenges while pregnant, Black women um, or Black pregnant people, they can experience um, additional symptoms because of systematic racism. So, in this typically for maternal mental health, things like mood disorders, anxiety, depression, those kinds of things are prevalent, which makes sense, right? It can be a stressful time, but it can also exacerbate, existing conditions that you have. and that, like, again, that is not just while you are pregnant, but also, postpartum. I think most people are familiar with postpartum depression, but it can be way more than that.
Correct.
When you say way more than that, what do you mean?
Um, Cindy, do you want to elaborate some?
Yeah, sure. When you think about postpartum depression, and a lot of individuals hear about postpartum depression, but we also have postpartum anxiety, which is PPA, postpartum PTSD, postpartum psychosis, and another common name is perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. Um, One of the ones that kind of sometimes for me I observe slips through the crack is like the PTSD part. That name alone causes a form of stigma, but it's results from traumatic childbirth experiences. When you think about the anxiety, postpartum anxiety, the intense worry and fear, um, then it often accompanies many physical symptoms, such as, when anyone that's experienced anxiety experience that rapid heartbeat, or you can feel nauseated, or you can feel like you're kind of boxed in, or you can't breathe. Um, so it's such a wide range of trying to identify what it is you're feeling, especially during pregnancy or after birth. um, it's that kind of checking in with yourself. And as Black women, that's something we typically don't have time to do.
There's a question circling around in my head. You said that some of this can be due to childhood trauma. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that women who experience childhood trauma, when they are pregnant, they tend to have all of these issues with anxiety, depression. They're more prevalent to have a mental health issue,
Mhm.
more so than someone who has not gone through trauma. Am I hearing you correct in that?
Mhm. Yeah, somewhat, and that's somewhat a good way to describe it. Use the analogy of someone who may have, and this has come up a lot, who may have had experienced sexual abuse as a child, and then you get pregnant. You may have throughout life overcame those feelings, or you felt you have overcame those feelings in some capacity and navigated it through your life, and then you end up pregnant, and somehow those feelings return during pregnancy. The
Okay.
anxiety returns during pregnancy. The thoughts, um, mama bear protective mode, not wanting your child that you're carrying to experience what you may have experienced in your life. All those things can create a form of anxiety and stress, and in turn the label PTSD.
This is a very interesting topic because I cannot think of many women who have not experienced some form of trauma in their childhood, whether it is incest, rape, some form of sexual molestation. It could be you grew up in a household where there is violence and domestic violence and stuff like that. I cannot think of a situation where, because just about every woman that I talked to have experienced some form of trauma, however slight it may have been, some dysfunction within the family. It is not always of a sexual nature, but to watch your mother's partner abuse her, or to watch your mother or even your father switching out partners often, I'm quite sure that that causes some sort of emotional trauma to young people. But to hear you say that when a woman is pregnant and she has experienced trauma, all of these things can come up for her. All of these emotions can, she gets triggered. And I know of a young lady who I'm working with who recently had a child and recently called me and said, you know what, I feel like just ending it all. And I know that she's gone through some traumas as a young person. And all I'm thinking, how do you end it all when you have brought another being into the world who's dependent on you to be mentally stable, to be emotionally balanced, and to be spiritually strong to get them through their formative years. And the child is also female. And I'm wondering if women who have experienced trauma passes that trauma to their offspring while in vitro, the child is still in the womb. Do we pass those emotions on to our children?
Well, Sonia.
Either of you can answer this question,
Yeah, like I'm gonna just jump on in. But what you're saying is like there's already scientific evidence, right? That and beyond scientific evidence, because I don't want to center Western science as the thing to look at, because this is also wisdom of peoples and communities for forever. But that the eggs that reside in me, like so, like if my grandmother, like is that what it is? Like I was in my grandmother through my mother being in my grandmother. So if my grandmother experienced trauma, it leaves an imprint on the egg.
Wow.
And so my grandmother is carrying my mom who has the eggs already, right? The eggs are developing in utero. And then I'm coming from that egg. That means I also have experienced the trauma that my grandmother has experienced. So even beyond what happens in the home, and of course, what happens in the home is extremely important as well. There's a legacy that is left on the genetics, on the DNA, which is the generational trauma, right? Um, and then additionally, I just want to highlight this part is that oftentimes when we think about uh, you know the stuff that can happen in a home to cause people to have mood disorders or have any mental health issue, um, we look at violence, things that are violent and those things that we consider to be traumatic. And also, right, you can be in a home where you have two parents, right, and you're taken care of, like you don't have to worry about food or clothing, or you're in a stable environment that way. But if your parents are unable to support you emotionally, that also leaves trauma on individuals. If you're never comforted, if as a child, if you're left to cry it out, these kinds of things also um, cause mental issues in later life.
Oh, wow. So if I'm hearing you correctly, we as women have a lot of work to do in terms of healing our future generations by healing ourselves first so that when we have children, we can pass that healing on to our children so that our children's children are gifted that gift of being healed from our traumas. If I'm hearing you correctly, that we need to heal our trauma so that the generations coming don't carry that trauma. It was in the DNA from one generation to the next. And
Yeah,
I
like
like that idea because as a spiritual practitioner, I believe in returning people back to wholeness. But having heard you put it into that from a scientific context really makes sense in that if we work together to help people to really understand what and how they got to be the way they are and work to, eradicate those negative emotions to be better for the generations that are coming. I think we're on the path of making the world a better place, so to speak. And I'm going to go on to my next question about how do cultural and societal expectations impact the mental health of Black folks?
Mm.
I'm going to ask this question to Cindy first. I'm going to let Cindy answer first.
Um, well, culturally, we're always stuck with stereotypes, um, especially with Black women. We also have the stigma around mental health, um, and racial discrimination, especially for the West or the United States. It creates so much stress, and if you're culturally expected to be a strong Black woman, which we are always labeled, and in here it's prevalent where we're expected to get over things and just deal with things. Um, and so it makes it challenging, I would say, for us to even focus on ourselves enough to seek the support that we may need, especially during pregnancy and raising our children. We have priorities, and my biggest push is always how do we balance this out, because we are no good for anyone if we're not good for ourselves. If we can't, really focus on our healing, how can you translate healing to others?
Thank you, Cindy. I like that. Self first. Self care is very important. What is your take on that, Ethiopia?
I'm over here like, to what Cindy said. I I want to bring in like, um, so there's studies on perceived racism, right? Because they say like it's how you perceive it. But this study was the study that I'm referring to was done in the United States, but it was done in the United States from people who were from all Black folks who were from different parts of the world who had immigrated to the United States as well. But that when there's perceived racism, our body we have more stress on our bodies, right? Perceived racism brings more stress on our bodies, and that shows up in ways of heart disease, diabetes, cancer. It the perceived racism creates an emotional stress that shows up physically in our bodies, right? And so having that, right, having the, like Cindy said, the stereotypes, right? Black women are we are taught that we are supposed to carry the world, right? That's the idea of the strong Black woman. It's like Cindy said, no matter what is going on, you keep your head up, you keep it moving, you be strong, you're strong. And that narrative doesn't allow for space for us to really take care of ourselves, right? Someone can tell you, go be strong, keep your head up. How? How do I do that if there's a requirement that I am my sole and only resource? How do I keep it all together? The way that I'll speak to the United States because I don't have the information for other places, but in the United States, Black men are more likely to be incarcerated, right? Not because Black men, there's something wrong with Black men in the United States, but because the system is set up that Black men are fed into into the penal system to be incarcerated, right? And so with that, if Black men are being funneled into prison, who's there to take care of the family?
And I think too, when you break it down to the expectations put a lot of pressure. If you're expected to do certain things a way that is structured societal wise. Like you're expected to show up for your doctor's appointments regardless of how you're feeling. You're expected to have your children at a school, even if the school in is not up to the standards you set for your household, and you have no other access to the things that you want for your children, you are expected to have them there, and you are expected to go out and work and provide for your family, even if you don't have childcare. So or if you're all these expectations that we have to overcome, and then on top of that take care of ourselves. So then if we lash out in a sense where we having a bad day, things are not going the way that we expect it to go, you can be labeled, and here we go back to labels, titles, expectations, as the angry black woman. You're struggling with behavior health, and you're crying and you're sad, and you know you may one day find yourself walking down the street talking to yourself, and someone's looking at you or perceiving you to be the word crazy or
Mm-hmm.
insane. All these labels, which pulls us back into this, well, I can't be who I need to be, and I can't take care of myself the way I need to take care of myself because others going to perceive me in this way. And then what's at jeopardy? Possibly losing your children whom you care for. You just need some extra support. And then who do you reach out for support? There isn't, there are agencies that may say that they're here to support and help, but some of those agencies checkbox. They're here to check off the boxes and send you on their way. There's no real solid support for our communities.
Cindy, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to just jump right in because what you're saying is so important to underscore. It reminds me of like when I was in high school, um, like if a girl got pregnant in high school, she had to leave that school. So you get pregnant in high school, and the stigma and the shame of being out, like now you can't forward your education at this particular school. You have to go find a whole nother school. And I love what you said, Cindy, about like, like it's almost like you get punished for not having the support, but societal wise, it's not set up for you to have the support. Right? If you end up being a single parent, people say, well, you're a single parent, and they shame single mothers. It's like I don't know too many people that have entered into that realm of parenthood expecting, or mothers expecting to do it all by themselves.
Can
And
I
so,
just?
okay, so I'm sorry,
I
go
don't
ahead.
want to cross you, but I'm listening to the term single parent, and I think that a lot of what we experience stems from colonialism, especially here on the island, stem from colonialism. When you're not allowed to have a proper family structure, when your males are just used as studs to impregnate so that you can have workers for no pay. And based on what we've said earlier, could all of this, where men are not stepping up, some men, we qualify that, some men are not stepping up and taking responsibility for their offspring for whatever reason, they don't feel that need to connect. Could that also be from the generational trauma that some of our foreparents would have gone through of not being able to bond with their children? And I know here in the Caribbean, a lot of young people my age would say, I didn't grow up in a family where we held each other and said we loved each other. There was none of that when we were growing up. Parents had children, they gave us all of the material things that they could afford, but that emotional connection was not there. And I'm just wondering if all of that is inherited through our DNA from a period that we did not experience, but our foreparents would have experienced. That
I
disconnect. So we're talking about single mothers, but I think that women have always had the challenge of taking care of their offspring from way back without a male being present. Because if you don't have the right to have your partner with you, then some of what we're seeing is residual of eras that we thought were long forgotten, but obviously still being carried at a subconscious level through our DNA.
correct. I think
At least that's my spin on that.
oh yeah, and I feel it's so multifaceted because you know, growing up here in America, in the United States, we see a lot of separation of black homes. And it's sometimes purposeful. If a mom gets pregnant, like ET used the example of a teen mom or a young mom getting pregnant and she's having a baby, financially she's not stable. So then you're relying on the government, the public housing, as your means to have a home, a roof over your head. It's like a catch 22. So you get in this space, maybe that partner, that father wants to be there, but there are stipulations to have financial means from the government, and one of those is to exclude that other parent from being actively involved. That is something that I can't really wrap my head around how it even makes sense, but it makes sense for our community. Coming from community, it's a look that's horrific. So that partner, that father is not allowed to be in the home with the child actively because you are now living in public housing. Um, and we, as women, we would probably never know what men are faced up against because I know that there are a lot of men who want to be actively involved with their children, but there's barriers to that access. And then you have some, you know, Ethiopia mentioned the prison system. What's better way for a father not to be able to be involved with their child if they're incarcerated on an active day-to-day basis? Um, and then when you do find it where the couple decides to stay together for the sake of the children, it's a struggle. It's very challenging where sometimes it forces the situation to revert back to, well, let's go, I'm gonna go back into public housing and you go over here and you find another job and another means. But it's always stacked, the deck is always stacked against, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do understand that, and as I listen to you, I'm trying to think of what happens culturally here in Barbados, and one of the things I can say is that as a small island state, people are more supportive of women who have children. We don't have those rules and regulations here where if you have a government house that the male can't stay in it. I don't even think we address that. If you need to be in a government unit, then so be it. That's a family arrangement for the most part because the ranks are small to begin with. But when we support our women who are in need of support, I don't think that we go to that extent to say, well, the man can't be a part of that. And in addition to that, we still have um, a family system, a neighborhood system where we take care of each other, especially in the village setting, especially in the village setting, in small communities that are not um, considered to be upper middle class and stuff like that. You still find people taking care of each other, making sure that their meals on the table. We do a lot of charity work here in Barbados, especially some of the churches. They really make sure that persons in the neighborhood are taken care of. So comparing what happens in Barbados to what happens in the USA, I think that we take care of our people. We take care of teen mothers. They're allowed to go back to their old schools. I've seen situations where girls went to school big, pregnant, and showing. They were never kicked out of school or told you can't come back here. And there are situations where if a student is really doing well at school, they are allowed to have the child and then go back to the same school and continue with the education. We tend to be more supportive of young women, making sure that they get that education if that is the direction that they're going into.
Mhm. And I see that here that they support mothers with children and they support them at in one instance it's great, and then for me it's how do you elevate our mothers, and this is where it becomes a little challenging for me to also comprehend is that if you're in public housing and you find a job and you go to school and you get the education and now you're ready to start building a financial structure for your family, everything that the government has provided to you is stripped away. So if there's no way to thrive and grow within yourself. There's no stepping out of the system or the programs to be able to financially build yourself. It's like if you're in public housing and you get a job the next day, then everything increases for you. Things are cut off. There's no way to save and actually start planning. For some, family planning is huge. It takes time, and building out your career, building out your financial structure, it takes time. So imagine you pregnant, end up in public housing, you go to school, you get your education, and now just got hired onto a job that may be your dream job. You're just starting out, you have no foundation anymore. You have what you have, and then you're expected to go out and just start. And that's not realistic as well. You need
No,
time.
that's a major setback because if you're not prepared for life in a different environment, then that's a disadvantage. Starting before you're ready, starting before. I know here in Barbados, people can stay on those systems forever,
Mhm.
forever. But we also have programs to get people off of welfare. We encourage people to take classes. We have a very supportive system here. We take care of our people. That much I can say. We make sure that every Barbadian has access to good education. We have a hotline here in Barbados for people who are having mental health issues to call in. The challenge with mental health issues is that people are afraid to raise their voice. They are afraid to come out and say, look, I'm not feeling mentally well today. This is what is going on. People are afraid of being called crazy, mad, whatever terms. They're afraid of that stigma. And I guess in Barbados, because we're a small society, very small, everybody practically knows everybody. Or if you don't know everybody, somebody who knows you know somebody that you know. So it comes down to keeping it all on the inside rather than sharing, rather than reaching out for that support so that you can be in a healthier place.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the challenges, and this is why this show exists to destigmatize not being in a good place mentally, because there are going to be situations where I don't feel well all the time. There's times when I want to blow a fuse, want to get angry, and I've heard a young lady say recently, I'm crying, but I don't know why I'm crying. My body aches, but I don't know why it's gone. Have all these tests done, and so there's nothing, but my body's in pain. I'm crying all the time. which means there's some emotional stuff going on that has not been addressed. At least that's my assessment of the situation. There's something going on at a deeper level that has not been addressed. So the body's taking it on. And with that, I want to move on to barriers to yeah, barriers to mental health.
Yeah.
Hey, if I can just jump in right
Maternal
here,
mental
it's like I just want to say this, like in the United States, there are resources for pregnant teenagers. Like, I mean, through the years, things have changed. And even when I was in high school, they had alternative schools where if you were pregnant, you could go to those schools and stuff like that. Yet I feel like there's like what I was speaking to is just like pregnancy doesn't always, it's not always seen as this, like it's positioned for us as like you're pregnant, yay, everybody's happy. It's not always that way. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's there, like there are the stigmas, there are the, you know, the different things, like how did you get pregnant? You know, being kicked out of school is mild in comparison to some of the stuff that friends of mine experienced once they got pregnant. Some people got kicked out of their homes. You know what I'm saying? And so like I'm
well,
thankful that in Barbados that there's more of that, there's more community. Um and when you say we, I'm imagining that you're saying like we take care of each other. It's beyond just individual people, but that the government is involved with taking care of people. And I also want to highlight that also happens here in the United States. That, you know, people find the resource in community because the structure is not necessarily there, um, societal wise. So you go to the community, you know, that exists as well. However, it doesn't, like what Cindy was highlighting, it doesn't exist to a place where folks can thrive. I'm not talking about the one-off person that was like, you know, I was, you know, I was a single parent, single mom with 4 children, and I worked by myself, and I worked nights and weekends and went to school in the daytime, and I was able to do, like, not the one-off. I mean, just like in general, to elevate every person who has children, so that those children can grow up in a home that supports their mental wellness, that supports safety for them to express their emotions, to feel and be present with their emotions. Because ultimately, when we're talking about mental health issues, we're talking about folks not having the emotional support to deal with stuff. Gabor Mate, and I don't know if he's, let me not quote him because I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but I heard him say it, that trauma is not the event. Trauma is what happens after the event.
yeah, I've heard
So
that as well.
if you experience something that is traumatic and you have people there to say, hey, we are here, cry, yes, I'm here to love on you, I'm here to cook food for you, I'm here to help you keep your home tidy, I'm help you with this, I'm helping you with that. From when you're young, you have a way of dealing with things differently than if you are tasked to deal with everything alone, right? So on one level, if society is saying that you're supposed to, I'm bringing it back to black women. Society is telling black women that we're strong enough to do it by ourselves, then what does support look like for us? And
Mhm.
black women oftentimes are the ones to show up for each other.
That's
Right.
correct. That's correct. Sisters caring for sisters. That is so correct. Even here, that is so true. Women are always showing up for each other. You know, we're there for each other. We're very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
a lot of us are still not equipped to handle the emotional and mental breakdown because, in as much as we show up for each other, sometimes we say things that can really trigger a person or push them over the deep edge. We still
Mm-hmm.
have to be mindful of how we interact with people. Yeah, they'll cook for you, they'll bring you food, they'll hold you and comfort you. but sometimes people can say some very brutal things to you when you're going through pain. And it comes from a place of not knowing. When sometimes the best thing to do is just to be present and be silent.
Sonia, you mentioned something, like in that, like people showing up but not knowing what to say. And in that way, there's a lack of safety. What I don't know about Barbados in the sense of growing up there and knowing the culture there. But what I do know is that the Caribbean was a playground for piracy, enslavement. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
correct.
Like colonization happened as well, but enslavement was a big part, right? And it ran rampant with, I mean, people in the Caribbean, sugar. Sugar was being grown. That was a primary crop, right? Maybe cocoa and coffee and things like that. But these things that were being grown, think about the sugar. Every place in the Caribbean has their type of rum, right? So you have these things, these things that are in these places that are being grown by people who were kidnapped, human trafficked to another part of the world and enslaved. And then it was pure piracy going on because there was fighting between the different powers that be at the time to say who was going to own this, right? While you got the East and the West Indies, right? While you got like you have Guyana and French guy and Guyana. You see what I'm saying? There was a lot going on right there, and the folks that were enslaved and that when you talk about that culture that had existed there, it makes sense that people didn't have the time to show up to you and comfort you in a way that made sense fully, right? There's also that legacy of enslavement in the Caribbean that shows up in the way that I mean, my dad is Jamaican, so I know that extent is that shows up in the way that we deal with each other. How do you who's taking care of your mental health in enslavement? And then when you move to emancipation, then you have all of these laws that these things that you have to conform to whiteness as a standard that is absolutely against what you look like. Absolutely against what you know community and family to be. So, Sonia, you had mentioned earlier, like of the legacy of enslavement, and Dr. Joy DeGruy has that book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, when she talks about things like that, where like you know um, the mothers during slavery, the mothers when they people would ask about their children, they would say, "Man, he's no good. He's not the best." But they were saying that because they didn't want anyone to think that they were good enough to sell them, to take them away. So like there's a lot of legacy of colonialism, enslavement, and the harshness of those times that are imprinted on us today. The best thing that we can do for ourselves, uh, for the people that can get pregnant and the people that decide that they will be engaged in family and want to be a part of community in a way that builds community, that their community is thriving, is for us to acknowledge what we have gone through, to acknowledge how we feel, and to get the support so that we can go to that path of healing.
Thank you. I like where you've gone with that because it is about healing. It is about bringing those women who are considering starting a family to that place where they understand the history, where they understand things that can trigger them and how to pass on negative behavior patterns to their children. Because it's not just about being mentally unstable during pregnancy and after pregnancy, but it is what legacy are you passing on to your offspring? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to carry this torch. I remember being pregnant and going through a bit of trauma, and a friend from Pakistan said to me, no matter what is happening, be happy because you want your baby to be happy. Be happy. Find things to make you happy. And it was at that stage that I started to listen to a lot of Mozart and Chopin and a lot of classical music and meditate a lot. Meditate a lot. And I think that helped to some extent. I think that helped. But what's in your DNA is in your DNA, yes? But
Correct.
that did help. My daughter today is doing well for herself. There's still some things that we need to work on, and she has agreed to work on those things. But being happy during pregnancy is one of the things that I personally would advocate for.
Right.
You
That's
know,
that's me. When you think about pregnancy and mental health, um, we have to really acknowledge the barriers that we are identifying where those are coming from, like historical genetics, you know, and what are the barriers? And when we think about them, financial constraints, seeking support from a behavioral health specialist, um, it costs. There's a cost associated. Um, a big lack of representation for individuals that look like ourselves, who we feel like we can connect with, due to cultural mistrust in our healthcare systems. I'm not sure how that flows in Barbados, but there's a big mistrust in our healthcare system in the United States, due to the maternal health crisis that we have here for Black maternal health. Black women are at a rate that's higher to experience adverse birth outcomes than our white counterparts. So there's a big mistrust. We talked about the stigma. We didn't talk about the systemic racism in our healthcare system, the biases and the discriminations, and that all flows back to the stigmas and expectations that we are felt we things that we're felt we must do or expected of us, and of the overall unequal treatment of Black women versus our counterparts or women of color.
I
Um,
will say it would be unfair of me to really compare the USA and Barbados because we're 95% black. Our legislation written by our people. We write our legislation, we change and amend things. And those things happen because our parliament is a black parliament. Our politicians look like me, and lots of females are also in politics here in Barbados. We have great representation,
wow.
great representation. Our political leader, our prime minister is female, our president is female. Um, we have a lot of women in leadership position here in Barbados, and as I said, we make our legislation. Black people making legislation for black people, so it is different. And yes, we do complain when things are the way we think they ought to be, guys. But primarily, I think that we are in a good place. Our healthcare system, at the moment, it is free. Pregnant women go to any clinic in Barbados, and that is as free as it can be, because taxation covers the cost. But you don't have to shell out thousands of dollars on prenatal care unless you choose to go to a private doctor. We have a relatively good system here, and I'm hoping that it stays in place. Even for mental health care, we have a relatively good system. I'm seeing more and more people coming forward and putting um, programs in place for mental wellness, and I applaud that. As I said earlier, we take care of our people.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I wish some of those practices was something that was here for our pregnant families, our mothers, for our communities here, because that's not afforded here, and that's why we have so many disparities in and mortality and morbidity rates here in the United States for women of color.
Well, I want to look at some self-care and coping strategies that you can share with our audience and with women who will probably watch this recording at a later date. What are some of the things that women can do to take care of themselves and to cope?
Well, self-care is for me is most important. Being mindful, we got this new thing like mindful and meditation, reaching out to your friends, your family, individuals you trust in community, um, taking time for yourself, I think is huge. You gotta take time to figure out what you love, what figure out your passions, figure out where you want to be, and sometimes that can be very challenging. I remember when I started this work and I was talking to a mental health professional, and the one thing they said was, "Cindy, what do you love?" Your typical thing is, I love my family, I love my kids. And she was like, "No, what do you love? What do you love to do?" And at that point, I couldn't even figure that out because I had bogged myself down with life and family so much that I lost myself. So, like, reconnecting with yourself, um, and you know, exercising. They you do the thing of regularly exercising and a healthy diet, but everyone, that may not be what their jazz is. So music, art, being creative, um, going for a walk, just sitting in the shower sometimes and crying is I hate crying, but sometimes just sitting in there and just letting it all out is a good way of taking care of yourself. Um, I don't know, Ethiopia might have some of the best strategies.
Uh, Thank you, Cindy. You gave a lot of really good things, and yeah, like a lot of us haven't learned how to take care of ourselves. So when you say self care, is like, and self care is now a big market where self care is candles, and self care, go buy this, for self care. One of the biggest things for me, as far as mental and emotional self care, is having strong boundaries on who you allow in your life to get you stressed out. For me, it doesn't matter who the person is. Developing strong boundaries is very important for us, particularly because we're told that we're supposed to take on everybody's stuff and help everybody and carry the weight of the world on our shoulders and be strong and do it by ourselves. And then our families oftentimes model stuff for us that is not healthy as far as relationships. So if you have someone in your life that stresses you out every time they come around, you have to kind of question, why are they coming around? Or if they have to come around, how do you engage with that person so that it doesn't put stress on you? That is self-care. Self-care is making sure that you are exclusive with your time and energy. I don't think we talk about that enough, because it goes against the expectation for us to take care of everybody and everything. If your cup is not full, you can't give, right? My cup runneth over. My cup runneth over is when you can give. So if it's not there, then you do the work, whatever it takes to get your cup full. And as you're getting your cup full and to the point of it running over, then you can say, I have capacity to engage with stuff that's going to stress me out. Otherwise, you have very strong boundaries on that. And I think that is a foundational element of self care.
And take your time. Don't It's not a matter of getting it right. It's a matter of taking steps, baby steps. 5 minutes a day could equal out in a month, 30 an hour a day, 30 minutes a day to an hour a day. So it's not something that can happen, that I don't want you to expect it to happen immediately. Take just Journaling is also good. I've heard for self care, like just writing. One of my self care techniques is I like going to get a manicure and a pedicure. That's just mine. That's me. That's my self care for me. Every couple of weeks. So it's those little things that you take time out for yourself, and yeah, it
Yeah.
helps.
Can I jump back in? I just wanted to say,
Yes,
and to get to a place of knowing that you deserve it,
love
that you
that. I love that.
deserve it. You deserve time to yourself. You deserve to have your nails, your mani pedi. You deserve to play video games and binge watch Korean dramas or whatever you need to do. Like you deserve that because of how much you give. And a lot of times we're not credited for how much we give. And that part is important. I think for me what I like to say in my practice with my clients is that, right, I can tell you, like you might be on this place, I want to meditate, 30 minutes a day. Like real talk, if you can meditate for a minute, let's start there. I work with the body. I do somatic practices. And when I tell folks, I always say, like, you can schedule out time to do it or just do it when you remember. And whatever you remember, and whenever you remember to do it, if you do it, congratulate yourself because it is a practice. So, Cindy, thank you for highlighting that. Like, it doesn't have to be fast. It took all this time for us to get here. And when I say, like, not just us in this physical body, because it's centuries of stuff that has gone up that that shape how we present today, societal, communal, and familial and individual, right? So, like, it's taken so much time. So it's not to say, oh, it's not going to happen overnight or whatever. I'm not putting a time limit on anybody's healing or how they need to do it. When you remember to do it, do it. You know what I'm saying? And congratulate yourself and applaud yourself and celebrate yourself for doing that because that's also a part of self care.
I'm gonna ask this question because it just popped into my head. I'm gonna draw a scenario. I've just had a baby, and I'm going through all of those negative emotions. I don't connect with this child. I don't want this baby anymore because I'm not in a good place. What advice would you give to a woman who's going through that kind of scenario where she's suffering from a mental health issue after having her child? And what advice would you give to her partner in terms of supporting her through that period?
Is that for me or
I don't know. Do you want to jump
Either
in,
person can
Cindy?
answer. Whoever feels called to answer can answer that question.
well? I can say that in a situation like that, and as a doula, I follow the lead of my mom, my person, and I would support her and support the partner, and at one end respect her wishes and encourage, not even so much encourage because at this point it sounds like she will be depleted. Introduce her to a team, a trusted team, a team that I trust to help support her behavioral health needs. Um, because that's a real feeling. After pregnancy is a ball of hormones. Your hormones, and depending on what life experiences are, these are valid feelings. And I will definitely have to validate how she's feeling, but also help her to become mentally aware that she needs support, and in other breath support that partner and caring for that child while we work and support her. And that's communal. That's community. That's when you're bringing in your people, your community of people that you can trust, and to handle this is a delicate situation, and this is a real life scenario. Um, and give her the support that she needs, and however that
And
looks for her.
mhm. I know we're talking about a lot of psychological and emotional stuff, but what about psychiatric help? I know that psychologists don't prescribe medication, and we don't have a psychiatrist on board at the moment on this forum here. But You said the hormones are all over the place.
Mhm.
At what point do we refer people for psychiatric assistance to get that medication to balance things out?
That can be done immediately. I've heard of situations where that's all determined on what is actually going on. I mean, like I said, when you at the beginning, when you're looking at psychosis, um, postpartum psychosis and situations of those natures, I'm not a prescriber, but I would definitely support in the path of making sure those individuals can support her very well. However that looks, if it looks in a medication realm, these are all decisions I will help that individual make an informed choice, getting all the options out on the table, trying to figure out what best may work, whether it's hospitalization, an extended hospitalization for a while, or whether this is something we can do at home with um, having visits at home with therapists. And most importantly, it's making sure it's safe for them. You know, safety is going to be most important when someone's going through some type of um, mental breakdown at this point, you know, because we just never know. Mental illness is not a predictor of what could happen, but making sure that the individuals are in place to support that person holistically all the way around, including the family that is actually caring for the newborn, because now they're in a different type of state of mental awareness based upon what the situations may be.
Thank you so much, Cindy. We are on the hour. A matter of fact, we passed the hour by a little bit. But what I want for you to do in wrapping up is to share with our audience the importance of maternal mental health and why it's important and why there's a need for women before pregnancy to start addressing their emotional, spiritual, and mental well being. And I'm going to turn this over to Ethiopia.
Thank you. Just Cindy, thank you for saying everything you said about, psychiatric support and medication. I feel the exact same way. Um, whatever the client needs so that they can be well for themselves and that child. We center that, right? So the importance, like, just on that note, having support with your mental wellness is important. It's so important. And some of my greatest support has come from dear friends who cared enough to really be honest with me and hold that space with me. All right. Y'all don't know this, but I'm about to let everybody know now. Cindy was my doula for my daughter. Cindy was my doula.
Awesome.
My daughter is about to be 7 this year, and so I met Cindy when I was pregnant, and Cindy provided that emotional support. My partner was there as well, and Cindy came in as a doula and provided me with so many options that I had informed choice every step of the way. That in and of itself created so made me feel so much more relaxed in my body in comparison to what was happening with my pregnancy with my son. So having the support available is foundational, right? If there's a stigma in your area around mental health and or you have lack of access to mental health, is there someone that you trust? Is there someone that you trust? And seek that out. Seek out someone that you can trust so that you can be open and honest with yourself on how you are feeling, because a lot of times we've been taught to just stuff it down, pack it away, tuck it away, deal with that later, and it's always present, and how it shows up in our behaviors. So the importance of maternal mental wellness is, I mean, it's foundational, because however the mother is will show up affects how the child is going to be taken care of. if you are lucky enough with that last scenario, if you're lucky enough that if you're as the mom, if you're experiencing a lot of trauma and disconnection from the child, if the partner is there and can be available, then yes, let the partner come in and be the nurturer. That's what is missing from our culture now, is just, I mean, I'm speaking about the United States, I can't speak to anywhere else, but like that stepping in, that wraparound support that happens. And I had that in Cindy as a doula. But it's just, to remove the stigma, for us to talk about it, for people who are pregnant, pregnancy preparedness, like these kinds of things need to be spoken about more and more, so that folks can enter into pregnancy, having more access and opportunity to be supported with their mental and emotional wellness.
Thank you so much, Ethiopia. And Cindy, your last words, any last words on how you would advise people on how to maintain and manage before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy, the mental well-being?
I'm totally in alignment with what Ethiopia just stated. Like, know who your people are. Don't be afraid to take steps, or being uncomfortable, seeking out support, whether that's from family, a close friend, somebody that you can trust. Don't be afraid to ask questions, um, and really focus on taking care of yourself. There's no wrong in this. There's no wrong questions. There's You have to really center yourself and your needs. And if it's hard for you to identify your needs, then rely on those trusted individuals in your space. And when I say trusted, those ones that know you, know that, okay, I know you haven't eaten today. I'm going to come in there and I'm going to make you your favorite meal, and just sit down and comfort you in a different type of way. Sometimes comfort just looking, having somebody present with you, but just really center yourself and find what what makes you happy in these moments. This world is already hard enough, and then you're bringing a new life into this world. And I just encourage you just to know who your people are, know who you can count on and rely on, and lean on them. Take pride of Push pride on the table, push all those things to the table, and focus on your well-being before, during, and after this time of pregnancy.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Ethiopia. I made a list of all the little nuggets that I'm going to take away from my own personal journey as a spiritual practitioner to the clients that I encounter. And one is vulnerability, safe space, creating a safe space for others, compassion. I heard a lot of that coming through from what you were both saying: compassion, patience, community, courage, self-care, and be centered in yourself. Be centered. And with that, I wish to thank you both. This has been very informative for me, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation, because I think there's so much more that needs to be said, especially as it relates to maternal mental health. One of the things that really stood out for me is that it doesn't end after you birth the child, and it doesn't begin with the pregnancy. It is a lifetime commitment to be mentally well for generations that are going to come from you, making sure that your line is okay and the line coming from your line is okay and that everybody's okay, by making sure that you too, you take care of yourself first. It begins with me. That internal work, begins with me. And as my daughters become young ladies, I'm going to be passing this information on to them. And I'm hoping that in the future we have doulas in Barbados Who can help women to go through this process without the fear and the challenges that so many of us go through, and train doulas. Maybe this is something you can consider doing. Take a vacation, maybe a 2-week vacation, and do a nice little workshop and train a few doulas so that young women who are considering parenthood can have the same service that you provided for Ethiopia right here in Barbados. With that, I
Oh,
wish to thank you.
you're welcome. I would love that. That
And
would be great.
and we have one comment here. I'm going to read this one comment because it's coming from Isaiah Lawson. Speaking from the depths of my heart as a husband and a father, I count it as nothing less than a blessing to have stood by my wife in her most vulnerable moments, especially in the aftermath of childbirth. Postpartum depression is not a myth, but a stark reality that countless women grapple with. It's a battle fought in the shadows, often misunderstood and overlooked. As a society, and more so as partners and caregivers, we must shed light on this issue, extending our unwavering support. Trying to bring the rest of it up, and it's not happening at this moment. Isaiah, listen, I want to thank you for being here and supporting us. I
Yes.
want to thank you very much for your support.
Yes, thank you. And you're absolutely correct. It is real. It is so real.
Absolutely.
It's so real.
So, with that, ladies, I want to thank you both for being here. And I also want to thank the audience who showed up and gave us support. I'm looking forward to seeing you both again in the near future.
Yes.
In the near future. This has been an awesome, awesome discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Yes, thank you.
You are most welcome. Have a very pleasant day.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you.